All right, let's dive into a really fascinating and honestly pretty provocative idea: the wealth gap gene. We're going to look at the science that suggests our financial destiny might be influenced by something way deeper than just hard work or luck. So let's pull back the curtain on our own biology, shall we? I mean, it's a question that really gets to the heart of things, right? We've all heard those stories about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But what if your very biology affects your ability to even reach for those straps? Well, science is starting to look beyond just willpower and digging deep into our neural wiring. At the core of all this is a huge conflict happening inside our own heads. You've got the survival brain, which is laser focused on one thing, getting through the next 5 minutes. And then you've got the wealth brain, which has the luxury of planning for the next 5 years. The big question is, which one's in the driver's seat for you? To really understand this, we first have to look at the stuff you can't see, the invisible architecture inside ourselves. This is the biological blueprint that can shape how we react to the world before we even get a chance to think about it. And this brings us to this incredible field called epigenetics. Now, it's not about your actual DNA code changing. Think of it more like life experiences flipping switches on your genes, turning some on, some off. It fundamentally changes how your body reads its own instruction manual. And here's where it gets really personal. It means the stress your parents or even your grandparents went through could have left a mark. You might have actually inherited their baseline for cortisol, the main stress hormone. It's like being born with the volume on your internal alarm system already cranked way, way up. This inherited stress can leave what some scientists are now calling epigenetic scars. So let's go a little deeper into how the struggles of people who came before you could be a real biological thing for you today. So how does this actually happen? The mechanism is called DNA methylation. The easiest way to think about it is like a little sticky note that gets attached to one of your genes. Serious stress, we're talking poverty, famine, war, can slap these little methyl tags on your DNA. And the wild part is, those tags can get passed down, changing how that gene works for your kids and their kids. So let's get specific. How does this actually play out in the brain? Well, one of the main culprits is a gene called FKBP5. This gene is basically the main controller for our stress response. When it gets tagged, it can send the amygdala, that's the brain's fear center, into complete overdrive. Your brain is just constantly scanning for danger. It's on high alert 24/7. And you can imagine this creates a massive mismatch in the modern world, especially with finance. What was once a brilliant survival tool becomes a total liability. Your rational brain might look at an investment and see an opportunity for growth, but that hyperactive amygdala, it just screams threat, like there's a predator hiding in the stock market. And this is so, so important to remember. This reaction isn't a personal failing. It's not some kind of character flaw. It's a piece of biological software that was perfectly designed to keep your ancestors alive in a really dangerous world. The problem is, that software is now running in a completely different environment. Now, it's not just about what you've inherited. Let's talk about what happens to the brain in real time when it's under the constant grinding pressure of financial scarcity. Okay, this is a pretty stark way to put it, but it's backed by science. Poverty acts like a neurotoxin. The nonstop stress of not having enough, of worrying about bills and food and safety, it just floods the brain with cortisol. And over time, that has a corrosive effect, wearing down things like your memory and your ability to make good decisions. When the brain is under all that pressure, it goes into what researchers call tunneling mode. Your prefrontal cortex, the smart planning part of your brain, basically gets its budget slashed. All your mental energy gets rerouted to just surviving the here and now. I mean, planning for retirement becomes a neurological impossibility when you're just trying to figure out how to pay for dinner tonight. And this leads to something called temporal discounting. It's a fancy name for a pretty brutal reality. Your brain literally short circuits. It becomes biologically hardwired to want a tiny reward right now over a much bigger one in the future, because your survival brain isn't even sure you're going to be here in the future to collect it. Okay, I know, that all sounds pretty bleak, but here's where we pivot. Because if the brain can be wired for scarcity, modern neuroscience is showing us that it can absolutely be rewired. We actually have tools now to take back conscious control from these ancient biological programs. So, let's walk through a framework for this, a kind of neural reset protocol. It's a 3-step process. The whole idea is to intentionally calm down those old survival circuits so you can bring the modern, rational part of your brain back online. Let's break it down. First things first, you have to shut off that blaring survival alarm. And things like box breathing or even just splashing cold water on your face, these aren't just wellness fads. They're what we can call physiological neural overrides. They physically activate a nerve in your body that acts like a brake for your fight or flight system. You're literally telling your nervous system, hey, we're safe. Stand down. Okay, once you're calm, you can move to step 2. This is where you retrain your prefrontal cortex. It's about consciously shifting your focus. Instead of only seeing the risk of what you might lose, you force your brain to calculate the cost of doing nothing, the opportunity you lose by letting fear call the shots. You're basically using pure logic to fight back against that primal emotion. And finally, step 3, and this might be the most important one, establish a safety baseline. The old saying on Wall Street says it all: never trade with scared money. Before you make any big financial decision, you have to prove to your amygdala that your basic survival is not on the line. Because if a potential loss would send you into a real survival panic, guess what? That old wealth gap gene programming will take over and sabotage you every single time. So all of this leads us to our conclusion and a new way to think about your role in your own story. You are not just a passive victim of your genetic history. And this is really the ultimate takeaway here. Epigenetics proves that our choices, our actions, our environment, they can all change the way our genes are expressed. Your past might have written the first draft for sure, but you are the lead editor. You have the power to edit the script, to revise old chapters, and to actively shape what your biological story looks like moving forward. So, I'll leave you with this thought. Understanding this invisible architecture, it isn't about finding an excuse for where you are. It's about discovering the user manual for your own brain. So now that you can see the wiring, the question is no longer about what you're stuck with. The real question is, what will you choose to build?